He is a former Minister of National Development of Singapore, and he is currently a professor at Nanyang Technology University. He was the person behind the planning development of Marina City Bay, and then he spearheaded the Singapore Tianjin Eco City project, a joint government project by China and Singapore for developing a sustainable, scalable, and replicable city. Please, Mr. Ma. May I have applause, please. Our first speaker is Mr. Ho Tong Yen. He is the CEO of Sino-Singapore Tianjin Eco City Investment and Development Company Limited since January 1st, 2011. He is also an advisor to the Singapore Ministry of National Development. The Eco City, or Tianjin Eco City, is a high-level government-to-government project between Singapore and Chinese governments to develop a model for sustainable urbanization. Please, Mr. Ho. Our third speaker is Mr. Andreas Yuda. He is the legal counsel of Andritz Hydro. He oversees Ocean Kinetics Project for Southeast Asia. And our next speaker is Mr. Made Wahyu Wiratma. He is Growth and Strategy Leader, General Electric Distributed Power ASEAN. He overlooks power generation near demand, covering vertical market identification, initiation and development based on applications, growth and strategy in accordance to country needs and policies. Okay, last but not least is Ms. Hilary McMahon. He is Director of Research from Carbon War Room. She joined the CWR after working at the United Nations in New York as an advisor on climate change and technology issues. Please have a round of applause for Ms. All right, the first session will be opened by Mr. Ma, and he can have the floor for 10 minutes presenting and then concluding the session later after 1 hour. Please, the floor is yours.
Hello, hello. Good morning, everybody. Can you hear me? Okay, I've already taken up 1 minute of your time. So I've got about 9 minutes left, but what I'm going to do is actually summarize my presentation. I'm going to talk about the Singapore experience in our efforts to mitigate and reduce carbon emissions, and also to talk about our strategies in terms of adaptation to climate change. Hopefully I will not take 10 minutes. So first of all, talking about the okay, first of all, Singapore's national circumstances. I think you know we are a small island state, flat coastline, and therefore very highly urbanized, densely populated. And our lack of natural resources and our hinterland means that we have to be an export-oriented economy. And as a result of that, we import almost all of our energy needs. We are very, very dependent on fossil fuels. So you see here, no alternative energy, low wind speeds, no nuclear. I mean, if you put a nuclear power station on Singapore, that's it, you know. No large river systems, um, basically no geothermal. So actually there are no alternatives to fossil fuel. So what do we do? What is our environmental development principles? First of all, optimize our limited land use. We have a very rigorous urban planning regime which requires us to actually make the best use of our very limited 700 square kilometers of land. So we've always optimized use of land, but not at the expense of the environment, because in fact more than 2/3 of Singapore is still green cover. It's still green cover. So we have very high rise, high density, but we reserve 2/3 of the land for green cover. We've also invested heavily in environmental infrastructure, incineration plants. All waste in Singapore is incinerated, so that bottom ash only accounts for maybe about 2% of solids, and that goes into a landfill. We also have fully sewered the island, and of course flood alleviation schemes are now the latest heavy infrastructure projects. Then on manpower and technology, I think the emphasis is always on manpower and technology investments. Anti-pollution regulations is a very major part of our initiative. The anti-pollution unit, which started off as anti-pollution unit, was placed under the Prime Minister's department directly. It's now become the full Ministry of Environment. And then of course right pricing. I think this is a very key point. We do not subsidize strategic resources like water and energy. In fact, we charge full price for water, and in fact we have a water use tax on top of that. And then energy is also not subsidized. In fact, there is a tax on energy as well. And basically is to encourage efficient consumption and also appropriate resource allocation. And last but not least, education and engagement, right from school days. So talking about the way we have tackled it, I go back to our first sustainable blueprint, which we call the SSB, Sustainable Singapore Blueprint. It was our first blueprint for Sustainable Singapore, started in 2009. I chaired the first SSB committee, which was initiated by the Ministry of National Development, and the idea really was to start serious discussion on how we can boost resource efficiency and also enhance our urban environment. Secondly, how to build capabilities, and thirdly, community action. So let me share with you what we have done since then. Taking stock of SSB 2009, the thing that we discovered was that a lot of the energy consumption was in buildings. Almost a third of consumption was in the cooling of buildings. And so our first focus was on buildings. And in fact, I think this is probably the same in many tropical countries where energy consumption in buildings is very, very high. And I still don't know why, but most tropical countries cool their buildings down to 16, 17 degrees. Even in the hotel room here, I mean, last night, I saw my thermostat set at 16 degrees, and it was freezing. So I think that's the kind of thing that we have to try to educate our people. A lot of our people live in HDB flats, public housing, so again, that's another focus. So we started the Green Mark scheme, whereby the buildings, new buildings, first of all, were given green marks and were given incentives to reduce energy consumption and water and become more water efficient. Then we are now moving on to existing buildings. Second focus was on transport, another major source of energy consumption and carbon emissions. So buildings, transport. Later on, of course, we've always been very heavily focused on green and blue spaces. So this was another area to strengthen. Skyrise greenery became very, very prevalent because of government incentives again. And then, of course, tracking of biodiversity. Then last but not least is public cleanliness. public cleanliness is a hygiene factor, but it is something which I think is the public can be made more, can be involved in. So also more companies are joining this energy efficiency national partnership. There are more labeling schemes. There's more water efficiency and energy efficiency labels that has taken place since 2009. Waste and recycling. As I said, 80%, 85% of Singaporeans live in our public housing, which we call HDB. So we are focusing our attention on recycling to these particular blocks, changing the infrastructure so that we can change people's habits as well. Air quality is really concerning the tightening of regulations. So that we've gone, for example, from Euro 3, Euro 4, I think we are now moving to the next level. So these are some of the figures. I won't go into it. That has given us some comfort that we have actually made progress since 2009. So, what next? The next stage really is SSB 2015. SSB 2015 is an update, version 2.0 of our earlier plan, and this has just been announced by the Prime Minister, in fact last week, where we are now talking about getting more of the people involved in it. I think the realization is that you can't do it just top down. You've got to get people to be more involved and take more ownership of these efforts. And then of course, tightening the targets, making the targets more ambitious. So while there's been good progress made since 2009, we are actually going to do three things for 2015. Work even harder for clean and green Singapore, mitigate the carbon footprint, and secure access to water, energy, and food while improving our city's resource efficiency. These are very broad statements, but in essence, translated into action plans, this is what it means. Creating a more livable and enduring home, which means eco-smart towns. We are now actually going into different regions, whether it's Jurong or Punggol or even the Marina Bay that Shanti was talking about earlier, and creating whole districts which we will label eco-smart by using technology to create a more enduring and also a more environmentally friendly town. The other big target is car light. We're actually trying very ambitious ways of reducing car usage in Singapore. I think this is, to me, very ambitious because, like all countries in the world, I think the car is a very well-desired thing. So, how to get people off their cars? Zero waste, and finally, leading a leading green economy. So, essentially, how to make the SSB 2015 not an end in itself, but a blueprint for the future. So I won't go into all these details, but I will talk about just the whole of government effort. We have set up a interministerial committee on climate change chaired by the Deputy Prime Minister. So, in conclusion, our approach to address climate change is mitigation, adaptation, harnessing opportunities, and forging partnerships. And so I think this kind of workshop and seminars is one way for us to share our experiences, and I hope that today's presentation has been useful for us to start discussions later on. Thank you very much. Okay. I believe now I'll hand the floor over to
Thank you, Chairman Mr. Ma. I'd like to thank the organizers and Mr. Ma for giving me this opportunity to have a chat with you about the Tianjin Eco-City. Now, Mr. Ma has just outlined what Singapore is doing to build a more sustainable city. And in some ways, the Tianjin Eco-City is an effort by the Singapore government with China to jointly build an eco-city in China. Now, what I'll address today in the 5 minutes I have is these 4 questions. What is the eco-city? What makes us eco? What's happening thus far? And some observations that may perhaps be relevant to this forum today. Now first, what is the Tianjin Eco-City? It is a high-level government-to-government project between China and Singapore to build a model for sustainable urbanization. The project started in 2007, groundbreaking took place in 2008. We are now roughly into the 6th year. There are many levels of intergovernmental cooperation. The Deputy Prime Ministers meet every year to review the progress. Ministers meet, and officials meet almost every 2 months to discuss various aspects of the city's development, including planning, water, public housing, and so on. But in order to ensure that this is a replicable model, we ensure that the development of the city is driven on a commercial basis. And this is where my company comes in. It's a 50-50 joint venture between China and Singapore. Now, what makes us eco? I've attended many conferences where experts share their expectations of what an eco-city should have. And I'm glad to say that I'm able to put a little tick against each of these boxes. Let me explain a few examples. First, the site of the eco-city. This picture shows what the site of the eco-city used to be. It is non-farm land, lacking in fresh water. So this is not one of those so-called eco-projects that is developed by tearing down a lush natural environment. Next, we are guided by 2 broad sets of core principles. The first, the 3 harmonies. Harmony between people and the environment, which is obvious for an eco-city, but also between people and the economy. So it must be viable, it must have jobs for people, and also people and people, the social aspects of an eco-city. At the same time, we are guided by the 3 abilities. The eco-city must be practical, replicable, and scalable. So this is not just some expensive demonstration project. Now, the Tianjin Eco-City is a 30 square kilometer compact, transit-oriented development comprising work, live, play, and learn elements. A green city really begins with green master planning. So the eco-city was master planned to be highly walkable. The basic building block is what we call an eco-cell, roughly 400 meters by 400 meters, because studies have shown that this is what is considered a walkable distance. Now, there are community walkways and a 12-kilometer long linear park that runs through the whole eco-city, connecting all its major points. Another groundbreaking area of work is that we have actually set 26 key performance indicators. The world has been talking about eco-cities for about 3 to 4 decades, but there's still no international definition of what is an eco-city. In that sense, the Tianjin Eco-City sets certain benchmarks by defining exactly what we are trying to do. This allows us to focus our efforts towards achieving those goals, and also provides international yardsticks by which the progress of the eco-city can be measured. Now, how's the progress taking place so far? Picture says 1,000 words, so I'll show you a few pictures. This is the site of the eco-city in 2008. Deserted, barren land, abandoned salt farms. There's a sewage pond right in the middle of this area. 3 years later, this is what the eco-city looked like in 2011. It's a construction site. And today, this is what people would see as they approach the eco-city. An emerging green city is coming out on what used to be barren wasteland. And if we are able to zoom in to this view, you are able to see some of the aspects I was talking about. For example, the Eco Valley, the linear park that runs through the city, renewable energy, wind turbines, and so on. As well as we look at the building orientations, all the buildings are aligned in order to maximize exposure to the sun for heating, natural lighting, natural ventilation, and so on, all of which contribute to making this a greener city. Now, in the middle of the eco-city that used to be a sewage pond, it has now become a very nice recreational lake that residents can enjoy. We have more than 18,000 green homes launched, including public housing, modeled after the Singapore experience, and private housing, business parks and schools, amenities for residents to attract people to come to this place, parks and recreational spaces. All these are pictures taken in the eco-city recently. We also have, because it's a greenfield site, the privilege of having 100% green buildings. Now, this is an example of a low-carbon living lab. And in the next slide, you see, in some ways, an X-ray into the building to see some of the green features Also, the city aims for 20% renewable energy utilization. We go for wind, solar water heating, solar PV, as well as ground source heat pumps to supply the city's needs. And it's not just about hardware, but also software in order to promote green ways of life. Now, one can ask, yes, it sounds good, but is this a practical, viable model? And in that regard, I think it's useful to see, what does the market say? And I'm glad to say that the market's response has been positive. Developers have invested in the development of green homes, and 70% of them have been sold, showing that the market is receptive. It's also a platform for clean businesses, with more than 1,400 companies registered, providing tax revenue to finance the city's development. It's also got good, positive international recognition from most of the world's top media. And also, international organizations find this a useful case study. I was invited to Rio Plus 20 2 years ago. I was at the UN again earlier this year. And finally, I think it's important that it's actually welcomed by the residents, because ultimately it must be a city for the people. Ibu Shanti is asking me to conclude. So I'll just wrap up with just a few quick observations. First, I think it's of course not smooth sailing. There are challenges we dealt with. You need to balance between different goals. You go for quantum leap or incremental progress. Our emphasis is on doing what's practical. And you have to balance between different goals. Obviously, some job creation will be affected. You cannot attract all kinds of industries to a project like this. But at the same time, I think the Tianjin Eco-City shows that a sustainable city is viable, is an attractive proposition, and I think it can form part of the solutions as we work towards a greener tomorrow. Thank you.
Please take the podium.
Thank you. Good morning. In every time I'm asked to speak, the most difficult one is to try to compile something for 5 minutes. That's always challenging. So I've got 2 slides, and I hope I can capture everything. The second one is the title of presenting a key, a success story. Now, to derive and translate what success means, that's rather difficult for me. But I hope by the end of this presentation I can explain what we meant. So I'm representing a division from GE called GE Distributed Power. It translates basically to power generation via demand, smaller scale, and it's very new to GE. So to most of the GE guys in the world, we are very used in probably approaching the market with 200 to 1,000 megawatt. So we have to come down to 1 megawatt. That is very challenging for us. So let me show you the first slide. This is meant to show that when we try to address the regional or specific country issues, I started the so-called biomass gasification. This is the topic I'm going to present in Cambodia. There was a trial, and it's going to be commissioned next month, and it took about 3 years to do that. Now, after we did that, a team from GE somewhere came to different part of the world and dedicated its time for about 3 months to capture, to compile a study. And it shows that in terms of biomass, the ASEAN region apparently holds bring a very high promise by having more than, can't remember, 70 something gigawatt potential from the feedstock perspective. And out of that, 29, almost 30 gigawatt of available feedstock has been identified in Indonesia. Now, with a note that only 3% of that are applicable to be used as feedstock for power generation. So the question is, why is it so low? And if you look at, if we consider that as supply and demand on the right hand side, I just copy paste a data showing the smaller scale diesel power generation within PLN, and it shows you, hundreds of locations, very small, and this is the size that we're looking at, from 100 kilowatt to about 1 megawatt per site. And I think that's a good match between, the supply of biomass around the world, around the nations, and the demand that we can displace. So we came up with this technology solution. This is new. It's not a rocket science. It's not new in the world. But what's new is that GE came up with the so-called integrated biomass gasification solution that comes with the REP performance warranty from an OEM such as General Electric. So this will drive a project to a more financially conducive environment. This is a big difference in financing such projects. Now, if we have this now from GE, is that enough to address the demand and the supply that is available in the region? And the answer is this. Apparently and obviously, and I found that it is not the only thing the market is needed. When we created, or when GE came out with the division of distributed power, all of a sudden we are faced by a new segment of market which is not only utilities. The market of distributed power consists of plantation owner, industry, hospitals, malls, commercial buildings, waste owner, etc., etc., where basically they don't have the experience, background, track record in generating power, and therefore, even if they have the waste, even if they have the feedstock, they might not have the capability to develop a potential to become a commercially viable project. So I'm trying to show you that from on the top picture, from what I showed you before, home technology solution, we need to come up with the total solutions consisting of how to manage the feedstock, how to prepare the feedstock, how to use the integrated technology to produce power, and then how to utilize the waste heat, how to then sell it under a power purchase agreement to a utility company, and how to manage and utilize the byproduct. I did put some illustration on the byproduct, but before I touch that as a last point, I think partnership for solution is definitely a must. We, GE, only come up with the technology solutions. On the left-hand side, we need to start from being an advisory to the project development. We work with the project owner, we do the FS, we need to identify the feedstock, do the testing, and we have to come up with some technology partnering on the preparation of feedstock, etc. The EPC integrator, we come up with the project developer, maybe a third party, advisory on the fuel supply agreement, PPA, funding, financing, etc. The whole set of requirement to develop and successfully implement a project. So that cannot and does not come from GE itself. It comes from a list of partnerships that we manage and establish around in the region, or especially in Indonesia. And last is to touch on the carbon aspect. We picked the biomass gasification because it produces byproduct that can create or can act as a decarbonization, an agent to make it a carbon negative environment. And it's just information from NREL and how good it is. But to answer the question of the success story, I think the first success that I can present here is to convert the mindset of GE internally from a centralized power generation to a smaller scale decentralized power generation, to the remote area, to distributed power. And now we're implementing the pilot project in Indonesia. There are 3 projects there, and we're talking to PLN for about 10 different sites in the region. So hopefully Indonesia can become the hub of the biomass in ASEAN and a reference region in the world. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Pak Made. Our next speaker is Mr. Andreas Yuda from Andritz Hydro.
Good morning. We from Andritz offer 3 solutions for the sustainable energy. First, the smart grid solutions, and second is the rebate approach, and the third one, just go to the slide 14, please. And then the third one is ocean kinetic. So this is in whole will over for Indonesia and the Southeast Asia, the whole solution for the countries and the region as well. This is the Sarawak, the integrated approach between the investment, demand and supply. Go next slide. This is in Cambodia. Next. This is Iceland. Here, and the second, the second point is that Iceland, 72% from the all the annual power is go for aluminum smelting. This is similar to Indonesian situation. We have a lot of aluminum smelting here. Okay, next slide. Next. 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 Here the case study. So we built a rebate approach in South Sulawesi. This is not from PLN, so we are totally out of grid. Next. This is actually we already have a friendly negotiation with the regional government of province of North Kalimantan, the newest province. So we have two locations here. First is China, and second we have to still consider. Next, this is two approaches. The left one is the conventional approach. It's already done for the 70 years, and we offered you all this right one. Next, this is the points, bullets on the problems, characteristics. Next, this is our approach. So this will cover all the diseases, the obstacles, and do the bottlenecking. As you said that, okay, stop. Next. This is our mapping. Also, as you see that okay, the next presentation. Stop. The next one. This is enough. Sudah Pak. Okay. The next one is ocean kinetic. We have a maritime country here. Go backward, please. And we already signed the first in the world in Scotland. It's the map. Next. This is the power plant project, the tidal current. We name it tidal current. You can see. The first full-scale pre-commercial installed in 2003. Next. Bayafan de Canada. Next. France. Next. Chile. Next. Brazil. Next. Philippines. We have negotiations with the local company there, and still under negotiation with the Ministry of Energy of Philippines. Australia. Okay. Hello. Yes. Next. Isla Oman. Isla Oman. This is Indonesia. We are already thinking about the linking between tourism, energy, and also the self-reliance of poor people in the islands. So we make some this. Stay in the next before previous slide. So this is Bali, and we are considering two projects here in southern part of Bali. First is Serangan Island, and second is Bali Tourism Development Project. So we will put a an array of up to 5 megawatts of tidal current power plant here. We will put the plants here in the straits between two small islands in Nusa Penida. Okay, and then it could be tracked down to the mainland of Bali, also to cover Lombok as well. Please go back to the don't change if I don't. Jangan diganti dulu Pak yang tadi. Ya, sini aja Pak dulu ya. And the second one is Ala Strait, and the third one is Larantuka. Larantuka is here, and the best locations. We already do the desk study and also contacting many research centers around the world that the best possible sites is in Bali, which is lucky for us because Bali is the regional hub for SDSN, also for the all over the world knows Bali, yeah, and yeah, and it also create a integrated supply of electricity to the people in Nusa Penida. The government has the other source of electricities in Nusa Penida, and we want to integrate them. The second best is in Larantuka, and the third one is Ala Strait. Ala Strait, close to Lombok and Komodo, so it will create a link and match between the tourism and electricity supply. Next. This is how to install. It's quite big. The tool itself, the ballast could be 170 tons. We use the remotely operated vehicle and driverless for maintenance. Here's the end of our story now, this morning. And hopefully that we will have a collaborative joint research between our company and all research centers in the region to put down this as a reality. Maybe in 2015 or 2016, we will take 2 full years for manufacturing to create a tidal farm in the region, especially Philippines and Indonesia, and could be in other region as well. Thank you very much for listening.
Our next speaker, Ms. McMahon, please.
Thank you. So I think my breakout group is tired of hearing my voice, so I decided I'd give them a break and show them a video. So can we run the video, please? It should have audio as well.
Sun, sea, sand, fun and relaxation. Islands are naturally beautiful destinations that we all dream about. Sparkling waters, sunset beaches. Of course, for many people, it's home. And the reality of living on islands can be quite different from our holiday experience. Food, water, and energy all have to be imported from other places and are expensive. In fact, some people spend as much as 1/3 of their wages on their electricity bill. When we go there on holiday, we use a lot of energy too, for air conditioning, lights, swimming pools, cars, everything that makes our holiday great. And we also leave lots of waste behind which needs to be disposed of. All of this puts an even greater strain on the island's economy and beauty. So, what can islands do to relieve these pressures? They can use sun and wind to supply energy instead of oil. Unlike oil, these resources don't harm the environment or run out. And better still, they are freely available on islands every day. So why aren't more islands taking advantage of these natural resources? Well, for many islands, it's not always easy to know where to find the best available technology or how to attract the most expert companies in the world. The Carbon War Room is working with islands to bridge this gap. We launched our 10 Island Challenge to help islands build their renewable energy infrastructure and in doing so use much less oil and gas. Working with islands to help identify the possibilities and solutions that best meet the needs of the island, the economy, and most importantly, the people. We reach out across the world to the expert companies that can make this happen. And then, using a transparent process, the technology providers present their solutions, giving islanders a real choice. But we don't stop there. We invite investors to take a close look at the exciting opportunities and help attract the funding needed to make all this happen. Why do we do this? We want islands to move towards cheaper and cleaner energy, so islanders pay less for power. These changes will also boost local economies by creating jobs and helping local businesses. We want to bring deservedly worldwide attention to the best technology companies because islands provide amazing showrooms for the solutions of the future. And from what we learn, blueprints will be created so many more countries can do the same. But we can't do this without your support. If you want to help, please donate today. Or if you're a company with great solutions, contact us. Let's work together to ensure that the islands of the world can still be the beautiful destinations we dream of for generations to come.
So quicker than I could have presented it in 3 minutes. So I just wanted to add to that obviously the video makes it all look very easy. And I think our recognition of working with the islands in the Caribbean is that it's actually not that easy. It's taken us, with the help of Sherry and others, probably about 1.5 years to get 10 islands to commit. They had to go through an extensive visioning process to understand what their capabilities were, what was ideal in terms of the portfolio of energy. And most of the islands that we now have online have committed essentially to 80 to 100% renewables. So if I go to the second slide, I'm here on the second slide. What we did in order to help those islands, and this is freely available to anybody really who wants this process, is we created a playbook. And it walks you through all the different aspects of creating a renewable energy infrastructure. The first, obviously, communications and stakeholder engagement. The second is training and having people on island and being able to actually provide the solutions. The other is kind of a web presence, and in that, obviously, we have resources, but we also have a lot of databases, and we basically bring a lot of partners together in order to provide those resources. And then we have the playbook, and this is the main part of our process, where we literally go through each and every stage with the government, with the producers, with the energy sector, to essentially move through those solutions. So where we're at right now, if we move to the next slide. Where we're at right now is we have about almost 10 islands signed up. We're looking for obviously a few more. We've been even talking to Sherry and others about Kura and Bali. And we're basically trying to get all of these islands to the next stage, which is these types of commitments. So this is what we've secured for Q1 of next year, essentially. In many cases, we've gone to multilateral development banks and others to secure the funding. In other cases, we actually have private sector funding that has come with those commitments. And all of these should be online before the end of the year 2015. So it's a difficult process in terms of committing and visioning and getting essentially the commitment and the stakeholders engaged. But once that's done, these commitments can be very real and very implementable. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. Can you hear me? Yeah. We have had 5 presentations. Let me just very quickly summarize them, and then afterwards we should save some time for question and answers. So basically the first one on Singapore's Sustainable Development Experience. Then secondly, Mr. Ho talked about the Tianjin Eco-City, what makes it eco, what's the progress, what's the result so far, and whether it's been market tested. Pak Made talked about GE's distributed power generation in terms of changing it from a centralized to a decentralized platform, talking about biomass gasification. Andreas talked about new approaches to renewable energy, in particular hydroelectricity and also tidal current power, and the various experiences in different countries, including in Indonesia. And lastly, Hilary spoke about renewable energy for islands, about the 10 Island Challenge, and talking about the islands of the future. So maybe Singapore can nominate itself to be one of the islands under your plan as well. So we are actually an island. So that's very quickly the run through of the presentations today. I think let's open the floor for questions so that if there are any things that you want to clarify, please do so. It's a wonderful opportunity now. So, anybody? Yes. There's a lady in front.
My name is Rita. I'm with April. I have a question to Mr. Tan. I heard you mention about fly ash and bottom ash being landfill. I was wondering, is fly ash or bottom ash or coal ash is considered dangerous, hazardous, and toxic waste in Singapore?
No, I think the bottom ash is already the toxicity levels have all been assessed. In fact, what we are doing is we are actually transporting the bottom ash to a landfill which is off the sea, just in Singapore. It's an island called Semakau. So it's the island. It was made up. The landfill was actually made up of damming two islands together and to form a new island, and it's creating the ashes. The rubbish is actually creating a new island, and the new island has now become a eco habitat for wildlife, for birds. Actually, it's become a bird sanctuary. So that I think attests to the quality of the fact that it's not toxic. It's been tested for toxicity before it's been dumped, and it's creating what they call the garbage of Eden. Actually, was the name given by Nature magazine when they visited. So it created a nature habitat made up of garbage, and that way we have been able to maintain or keep the landfill sites away from the general public. Yeah.
How many tonnage are we talking about?
I don't have the numbers, but over the last 20 years when we started to do this, Semakau, from nothing, it has actually become an island. I can check the numbers for you in terms of tonnage.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yes, this gentleman in front, yes. You can address the questions to anybody. Yeah.
Thank you. John Thwaites from Monash University. I'd address my question to Mr. Ho and the Tianjin Eco-City extraordinary achievement in such a short space of time. I wonder, in the future, how will you continue to ensure the green performance is maintained once the buildings are built? How will you ensure that the people that live there maintain it and support it in the future?
Thank you. It's a 10 to 15 year project. So we're going to continue developing the eco-city for some time to come. So apart from what is going to be built, in terms of what is built, it's a very relevant consideration. So we have put in place green building maintenance standards, and we will work with the government to enforce those standards. I also mentioned briefly this concept of software. So we have to also promote recycling, ensure that people live greener ways of life. So to cite one specific example, this year we